Welcome to part 2 of the overview for my RealSword Type 97, aka Korba. In this video I will be discussing the internals and all the various things I've done to Korba to increase the performance. So, one of my favorite parts about this gun, which you're about to see, is just how extremely easy it is to work on this gun. If you want to get the gearbox out, you just pop this pin, slide this back. There are 2 screws you need to remove. The main one that kind of holds the gearbox in place. And then this one that holds the trigger armature. And that's it, you're good to go. Another nice thing, really nice feature that I like a lot, is the quick release spring guide. This is very convenient, especially when you're at the field. If for some reason you need to lower your FPS or something, maybe between events. Because back at Combat City there used to be a sort of like little indoor place where they would cap the FPS at 350. Whereas the outdoor field, yeah, normally I'd have a better grip on that, but oh well, I didn't break anything this time. I have destroyed my spring guide in the past launching it out, but yeah, sometimes there was a section of the field that had 350 FPS and another one that had 450, so it was nice to be able to swap out the spring in a couple minutes if I wanted to change events. So, I think I've got an M120 in here right now. I'm probably going to switch that. Oh, no wait, it should be an M130. Because I should be getting about 450 FPS. As far this, the Type 97 has what seems like a proprietary spring guide, but oh my goodness, it's been so long. I think this is a version 3 spring guide from like Classic Army or something, but you can get an, I think it's version 3, a spring guide where you take this little silver piece here off the back of your Type 97 stock spring guide, and you can switch for a ball bearing spring guide from, I think it's version 3, I can't remember which one it is. If I can find that information out again, I'll put it in the video description, but otherwise you can get like an aftermarket spring guide. I've got an SHS high torque? Yeah, SHS high torque motor. Another nice feature about the Type 97 is it's got a spring release, which I obviously don't need since, well, I mean, I don't need it right now since I removed the spring, but so that's why I ended up launching the spring out of here when I removed my spring guide, is I forgot to release the spring catch and it was pushed back just a little bit. I probably forgot to fire it in semi a couple times before I opened it up as well. Oh well. So this is the gearbox, my Type 97. It's pretty unique looking, or the Type 97's gearbox. So the interesting thing about the Type 97's gearbox is a lot of the parts are actually proprietary. For instance, the gears here, I suspect that they may possibly be version 7 compatible, but I also thought that the cylinder head might be version 7, but the version 7 cylinder head does not fit in the 97. so I'm a little skeptical to waste money trying to change the gears. My only issue with the gears on these, even though they've held up really well over the years, even with like M150 and M140 springs that I've experimented with, they work those springs fine, but their ratio is pretty high. If I remember correctly, when I calculated it out, the ratio was like 23 to 1. I'll edit on screen if it's actually different, but that's pretty high for someone that uses like 13 to 1 ratio gears in most of their other guns. It gets me good torque, but the rate of fire is, I guess the rate of fire is good enough, so I've never like really had a huge issue with the gears. Maybe the rate of fire could be a little better, but the trigger response is pretty darn good. So the gears are, I guess they're good enough for my purposes, though some people I'm sure would want lower ratio. I always thought maybe the Type 97B, the CQB version, had a gear set in it of lower ratio, but I never really looked into that. The piston itself is proprietary. I think if you took a regular piston and made this cut here out of it, it'd probably work, but the piston's held up fine for me, so I've never really been pressed to find a new piston. As far as the piston head goes, I added a aluminum one for a little more durability and a little more weight. This is actually the SHS double O-ring piston head. Normally it has this second O-ring on the farther forward slot here, but if you do use this piston head, I highly recommend removing this O-ring because it causes a lot of friction on your cylinder and a lot of extra drag, and it actually reduces my FPS by like 40, and I get better FPS consistency without it. So it's still a good piston head if you need a little bit of extra length to help with angle of engagement and just a little bit extra weight, but I do recommend removing that O-ring there. So should probably trim my nails before y'all pester me about that in the comments. So now for the internals, for the motor I've got an SHS high torque. The Type 97 just takes a standard short type motor here. As for Korba's internals, a lot of the Type 97's internals are actually stock. So the reason I launched the spring out earlier is because I forgot to use the spring release to relieve some of the tension. I probably forgot to fire it in semi-auto for a couple of rounds too. Not gonna lie, I have not opened up the gearbox in quite a while because I haven't had a field to airsoft at, or I haven't been airsofting for like a year, so maybe a little rusty, but I'm pretty sure I still remember all this stuff because I used to work on it a lot. But like I was saying, the Type 97, a lot of the internals are proprietary, like the gears here. I think that if I remember correctly, the ratio, these gears I calculated out at one point, is 23 to 1, which is a little on the high torque side. I prefer a lower ratio myself, but these gears have always served me pretty well. They've been able to take it pretty much whatever spring I can drop into. I've gone, I believe, up to 150, and they still give me a decent enough rate of fire. Maybe a slight bit higher rate of fire would be nice since I run an M130, but it's good enough for me, so I'm not gonna like try and hunt down a different set of gears. I've always wondered if the Type 97B had a lower ratio gear set since it's, you know, the CQB version, but I've never really looked into that. So the gears, like I said, they've held up great over the years. They don't have terribly much signs of wear, even though I've used some relatively somewhat heavier springs. Nothing too crazy. It's always been in the field legal range. But as for the piston and piston head, the piston itself is proprietary. As you can see, it's got a little cutout in the back here. I've always wondered, you could probably take a Dremel to a regular piston and modify it to fit the 97, but the stock piston's held up great over the years, even though there's some wear on the teeth. But if it ain't broken, don't fix it. When if it eventually shreds the teeth, I'll work on getting probably modifying a different piston to fit it. It does take standard piston heads. The piston head I have here is the SHS double O-ring one. You'll notice there are not 2 O-rings on mine. That's because I took the farther forward smaller O-ring off, which I highly recommend you do the same if you want to use this piston head, because this second O-ring causes a lot of drag and friction on the cylinder, and it actually decreased my FPS by like 40, which is kind of ridiculous. So it can be a decent enough piston head, though. It adds a little bit of extra weight because the stock piston head was, I think, was it palm? It's a typical material. But this one's aluminum, so it's a little heavier. And also, since it has the space for that second O-ring, it has a little bit, just goes a little bit farther forward, which can help with correcting your angle of engagement. Just a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty, once you remove this second O-ring, it's a pretty standard piston head, but it does have a tiniest little bit more weight and a little bit more length, which are good for my purposes, so I like the piston head. The cylinder is perfectly normal. I'm just using the standard brass one that I've polished. So the fun thing about working on the Type 97 is, since a lot of the parts, like the cylinder head and the piston, are proprietary, you kind of have to learn how to get good performance out of your gun through modifications. And I think that personally, the best way to tech your airsoft gun is actually through modifications. Most people think that you just want to drop in more expensive, shinier upgrade parts to get better performance. But in all the cases I've ever experimented with, which has been a lot of guns and a lot of upgrade parts over the span of like 5 or 6 years, I've always found that modifications actually get considerably better performance than just dropping in upgrade parts. So if you want to be a really top-of-the-line tech and really get good performance, I highly recommend doing some research and figuring out how to modify your parts, because upgrade parts you can modify exactly the same way. So you can get your fancy upgrade parts with good durability and the performance you want, while doing proper modifications can get even better performance out of them. And in some cases, if you know good modifications, you can save a lot of money on upgrades because you don't even need to buy new parts. Because a lot of guns, for the piston head, for example, if you just put in the correct O-ring, then you half the time don't even need to buy a piston head unless you want to upgrade durability or something. Because pretty much most, if not all, piston heads perform nearly the same when you get a good piston head in it. But I am filming a bunch of airsoft videos right now. I'm not sure the order of uploading, but check the video description, because I actually do have a video, or I will have a video uploaded all about compression mods, which I think is extremely important for any tech to watch. Even if you're relatively advanced, you just might learn something. If you're a new tech, I definitely think you'll learn some very valuable things. But enough of that self-promotion, and get back to my Type 97 here. The cylinder head is also proprietary, which is a little concerning because, as you'll see, it's a 2-part cylinder head, and 2-part cylinder heads are notorious for leaking around the nozzle, but you can modify that to get a perfect air seal, which I've done and which I've talked about in the other video. The cylinder is just a stock cylinder. I have also, like I said, I have suspected that version 7 cylinder heads might work in the Type 97, but I tried one, and the holes on the version 7 are too small to fit the pegs of the 97's gearbox, and I think the nozzle might be a tad off. But I have modified just with a bit of gasket maker around the edge of between the cylinder head and the cylinder to get a perfect air seal, even though I can't get a double O-ring cylinder head. And now the fun part is this air nozzle. This is the Pakiyama, or Freedom Art, I believe, flat air nozzle. It has a very, very well-sized O-ring that gets basically the perfect amount of seal. Just fits the the nozzle on the cylinder just right. So it's not like, I don't know if SHS has fixed their formula yet. I haven't used one in years, but the SHS air nozzles used to get a really good seal, but the O-ring was way too tight, and it would cause problems of the nozzle not cycling fast enough and not getting a seal with your bucking. But the Freedom Art air nozzle that I have here, it gets a really good seal and it cycles fast enough. So the only thing about the Freedom Art is, I don't know if you can see it, but the base of it is actually oval instead of round. So if you want to use this nozzle in your gun, you will have to modify your tappet plate or it will not work. So that's the only complaint I have with the Freedom Art. And through modifications, sometimes only once out of like the years I've been using this air nozzle, it's slipped off the tappet plate. So I actually have JB welded it down so I don't have to worry about that. But other than that, it's a very well sealing air nozzle and I get very good performance out of it. It actually made like considerably noticeable increase in my FPS consistency as opposed to the stock one. Interestingly enough, the Type 97 takes M4 length air nozzles, which is good because the stock one I'm pretty sure didn't have an O-ring in it, and an O-ring air nozzle is very important for compression. So I'm pretty sure that's it for the gearbox. I don't think I've forgotten anything to go over. I guess I don't need to close that up just yet, but next up is the inner barrel and hop-up. So there are normally 2 screws on the side of the hop-up chamber to hold it down, but I've gone ahead and removed those to make this video a little faster. So the hop-up chamber here, it has a pretty good adjustment system. The dial's pretty accurate. I can usually get it in right where I want it to be, and it doesn't really seem to fluctuate too much during use. Camera ran out of storage space, so where was I? Oh yes, the hop-up chamber. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this hop-up chamber. This is the thing about the Type 97. It's got a lot of proprietary parts, but most of them are pretty darn good quality, so I probably wouldn't have upgraded them anyway, except for maybe a lower ratio gear set, but that's it for the chamber itself. Also, I use a maple leaf nub because I do believe it does a good job of applying a nice flat, even hop up to the R-hop patch. So I do believe that I like the maple leaf nubs for extended contact patch buckings like G-hop or R-hop or A+. As for the inner barrel, I've got a 455mm length Prometheus 6.03 bore, tight bore. I prefer 6.03 to 6.01 myself, especially for field guns. Prometheus is a pretty darn smooth bore as far as I can tell, and I've certainly got like the performance I've gotten out of it. I don't want, this barrel is not lapped because I really don't want to be bothered lapping a stainless steel barrel, and I don't really know if I want to be bothered lapping this barrel in general because this is a field gun, not a DMR. So obviously accuracy is important, but I get enough accuracy out of it to be happy, so I don't know if I want to put in the oh god, I hate lapping barrels. It's such a pain. I did it for my KCO too, but anyway, I've got the floss mod for my hop-up bucking just to make sure it gets a really good seal. Let me take the floss off here and I'll show you guys the my hop-up setup. So I've just got a G&G outer bucking because it gets me a perfect air seal as far as I can tell. When my hop-up assembly is fully put together and everything, I can't find any air leaks in it, so I think it's pretty good. I've also got an R-hop here. The top of the bucking's or the top of the patch is a little uneven, but well, it's actually pretty smooth. It just looks, it's just a little bit of extra material there. So the patch can use a little bit of modification, but I'm getting pretty good performance out of it. So I'm kind of in the middle of upgrading the R-hop patch, or tuning the R-hop patch. So use a little bit more work, but it's getting there. I probably replace my R-hop patches every couple of years, even though I guess it's not terribly necessary, but I kind of do it anyway. So that's the internal and external overview of Korba here, my Type 97. So believe that's covered everything. If you want to see a shooting demonstration, by the time you watch this it might be uploaded, so check the video description for that. Otherwise, I hope you found this video interesting, or maybe learned something or two about AEG teching through my incessant rambling. But thank you for watching, and you take care.